Over the course of the UFC's near 30-year run so far, there have been some truly epic fights. As the old saying goes, styles make fights. And sometimes when that cage door slams shut, two fighters simply bring the magic and let it all hang out. Today we are discussing 8 of the most exciting fights in UFC history, so stay right where you are. First up, we have Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson. When these two came together back in September 2013, Jones was undoubtedly the king of mixed martial arts, riding a 9-fight win streak which included wins over some true giants of the game such as Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, and Vitor Belfort. Many people expected him to simply walk through the big Swede, but it didn't exactly play out that way. The fight was an epic 5-round back and forth between two strikers, and some even suggested that Gustafsson had done enough to win after the bout. He had Jones in the most trouble anyone had ever had him in up to that point, but Jones was ultimately handed the unanimous decision win.
Seconds. And another one. Incredible. Gonna go the distance. Flying knee by Jones.
The fight was so good that a rematch was ordered 5 years later, but Jones wasn't going to be caught napping a second time and finished Gus in the 3rd round. Bones would later say about the first fight that he came into it with zero preparation, which if true just goes to show how good he really is. Do you guys remember this one? Next up is Zhang versus Joanna. Stick around. Widely regarded as the best female of all time and probably in the top 5 MMA fights of all time, the bout was awarded the greatest strawweight fight ever by Topology, as well as the best fight of 2020 overall. Zhang came in as the defending champion, having beaten Jessica Andrade the previous summer, but Yunjoy Chek had her eyes firmly on taking back her old title, and boy did she bring it. The fight was an absolute war between two warriors who left it all in the cage. Each round was extremely close, and both women showed off their true fighting philosophies by standing toe-to-toe and exchanging for 25 minutes. After the fight ended and Wiley had her arm raised, Joanna looked unrecognizable as her forehead had swelled to almost twice its size, a sign of just how brutal the fight had been. If you guys haven't yet seen this one, what are you waiting for? Go and check it out immediately. Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit is up next. The 2016 fight of the year was another truly epic bout in the UFC's welterweight division. Lawler's second defense of his title ranks in the top 10 in most outlets' best fights of all time, and for good reason. Like most other fights on today's list, this one featured two men who left everything out there, and on another night, the judges could have scored it for Condit. Unfortunately, for the Albuquerque fighter, the judges gave a split decision win to Lawler, which is often what happens when a fight is so close. Judges hand the win to the defending champion. Some fans spoke of a robbery after the fight as Carlos appeared to be the busier fighter. But when you fail to put your man away, you'll leave it in the hands of the judges. The fight was a true classic and both men dominated in parts, providing not just fight of the year, but one of the best and most exciting scraps of all time. Who did you guys have winning in this one? Give us your thoughts below.
This is so tough. It's every time I see him fight, he proves everyone wrong, shows how tough he is.
McGregor versus Diaz 2 is coming through now. Conor and Nate threw down for the second time in a matter of months in August 2016, with Nate having submitted the Irishman in their first fight. The second would go the distance and would also go down as one of the best fights of all time, with both men swinging for the fences. They stood and traded for the majority of the fight, and at multiple times throughout the bout, fans thought it could be about to end in a KO for either man. It didn't end up that way, however, and would go down to the judges' scorecards. McGregor, after landing the higher impact strikes, coupled with a state of Diaz's face after the fight had finished, was handed the decision win. He also managed to silence some of the naysayers who claimed he didn't have it in him to go 5 rounds with someone with the cardio of Nate Diaz. Not only did he get the win, but he managed to still look dangerous towards the end of the fight too. It's just a pity he decided to make the choices he did in the years after this epic fight. Give us your thoughts on this one below. Next up, we have Cub Swanson and Doo Ho Choi. Swanson took on the much-hyped Korean Choi back in December 2016 in one of the best 3-round fights you will ever see. The fight took place in Toronto and was 15 minutes of non-stop action as both men delivered the performances of their lives to ensure they walked away with the win. Of course, only one could take the W, which happened to be Swanson, but Choi certainly covered himself in glory too, as both men came forward the entire time. The pair exchanged strikes and were visibly exhausted as the bout progressed, but that didn't stop them trading as the clock wore down. Like many other fights on today's list, there was an argument for Choi to have won, but the biggest winner from this fight was the UFC, and this one will go down as an all-time classic. What did you guys think of this one? Usman versus Covington is coming through now. In Usman's first title defense, he came up against a man in the shape of Colby Covington, who was hell-bent on taking his title. But Usman was up for the challenge and provided 5 of the best rounds of 2019 and also managed to put Colby away in the final round. However, it wasn't as clear-cut as one might expect, and Covington gave an excellent account of himself and in parts looked as though he had the champion in trouble. Usman was probably slightly ahead as the fight rolled into the final round, but he wasn't about to just coast to victory. He put it on the challenger and knocked him out early in the round. The fight was so good that it spawned a rematch 2 years later, which was almost as good. Kamaru managed to retain his title in said rematch, but would come unstuck against Leon Edwards next time out, as he was KO'd via head kick in a fight he was cruising in. Would you like to see a third fight between Colby and Kamaru? We have Maurizio Rua and Dan Henderson next. Two bona fide legends of the game came together back in 2011 in what Topology have ranked as the 4th best fight of all time. Hendo managed to get the job done and was awarded a unanimous decision win, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Shogun certainly wasn't backwards in coming forwards and played his part in what was easily the best fight of 2011. The pair traded back and forth for 25 minutes, and having come off the back of a first-round knockout win over Fedor, Henderson probably wasn't expecting a test such as this. The fight wowed the fans, who couldn't take their eyes off the action, which was also Dan's return to the UFC after a 4-fight hiatus with Strikeforce. Newer fans of the UFC might not be too aware of these two legends, but they would be remiss if they didn't check this truly epic fight out. Do you guys remember this one? Pretty great, right? And finally, it's Griffin versus Bonner 1. No list of the best fights of all time would be complete without the fight which arguably started it all. Of course, the UFC had been going for more than a decade before these two came together in the octagon, but it was little more than a regional promotion, which didn't have the best reputation. All that changed on April 9, 2005, however, as Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar went to war in the finale of The Ultimate Fighter 1. The 3-round fight ushered in a new era for the UFC, as fans would go away and flood internet message boards about what they had seen. The two men stood and brawled for 15 minutes, and neither would back down as they competed for that elusive UFC contract. The fight was so good that the UFC would offer both men a contract off of the back of it, which Griffin won via unanimous decision in the end. The two would fight again just over a year later at UFC 62, with Griffin again picking up a unanimous decision win in what was also a pretty epic fight, just not quite as epic as the first one, which has gone down in history as arguably the most exciting fight ever. As always, thanks for dropping by today, and remember to tune in again next time when we will be talking about loads more cool bits and pieces. And why not do us a solid by liking and sharing our video today, whilst also subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on more great content going forward. Bye guys!